live from the drama-free true crime destination. Unfiltered, unscheduled, undeniably important. This is a special report from Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. Okay, we are live. Welcome on this Monday morning to a special report from Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw, and this morning I am covering the sentencing of Bionca Ellis. Now, if you remember, Bionca Ellis was recently convicted in the stabbing of 3-year-old Julian Wood. Now, if you remember the case correctly, she was next door at a Volunteers of America store, allegedly had stolen a pair of knives before returning to the Giant Eagle store next door, following both Margot Wood and Julian all the way out to the parking lot of the Giant Eagle before stabbing both of them. And now we're not gonna waste too much more time. I am getting everything set up here for you guys to see for yourself. Okay, now I believe I got that portion set correctly. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm gonna take myself out the shot. Actually, first of all, I gotta share it first. Yeah, it's Monday. Bear with me. All right, there's that. Now I can bring this to the screen. Okay, now everybody can see me, can see the screen. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take myself out of the shot, and I'm gonna give you a full screen experience so you can hear everything going on, from victim impact statements all the way through the sentencing.
Notice I also have the North Olmsted Police Department members of that department are here as well. We're going to begin this morning with Mr. and Mrs. Wood would like
All right, well, my name is Jared Wood, Jaredwood.
Very good. I'll ask the advocate maybe just to push that up a little.
Is this better?
Sure.
All right.
And thank you. I'll hear from you this morning.
Oh, thank you. I am here today to speak on behalf of my son, Julian Miles Wood, who is no longer here to speak for himself. And I am thankful for you to be giving me this opportunity to do so. It's hard to know where to start when talking about him. So I guess I'll start with letting you know that our family is no stranger to the struggles of cognitive or behavioral differences. Our oldest child has autism. He was actually considered nonverbal, and it wasn't until he was about 7 years old when he became verbal. We tried everything we could to help as parents. But what, or who I should say, actually got him to break free and open up and talk to the point to where we have actually a hard time getting him to stop now, was Julian himself. Julian had a special way with people to get them to grow and open up and just have fun. That was the kind of kid he was. He was funny, outgoing, fearless, and full of life, love, and laughter. The energy he brought to the world was boundless. I even called him my copper top baby because his hair wasn't as quite the same color as red as mine, but it was more of a copper color like the battery. Julian loved dinosaurs, and outside of saying hi, Mom and Dad, dinosaur was his first word, which actually shocked all of us with how big of a word it was at such a young age. He also loved Halloween, so much so that he chose to be a dinosaur every year without fail, and he would even find his old costumes throughout the year and put them on even though they no longer fit, not letting us take them off until it was bedtime, where we would have to put on his dino pajamas. However, these are moments that we'll never get the chance to share with him again. Julian had a way of letting you know he was near, like when he woke up in the morning, usually before daylight, with his thundering footsteps as he walked down the hallway from his room. That is when I knew it was my cue to get up to go get him some leche, which is milk. Another way Julian made his presence known was by taking his brother's toys and running around laughing because he knew he couldn't catch them, and it was funny to take big brother's things, which unknowingly helped his brother find his voice and start speaking up for himself. He always knew when you were down or feeling some kind of way, and he would do in his own way what he felt you needed to feel better. For me, when he felt that I was down or had a rough day, he would get his brother and they would tag team wrestle me and just beat me up. We would roughhouse a little on the bed here and there, and he would also run into the kitchen, whenever I came home from work to greet me. Sometimes I would tease him by hiding behind the doors, and he would look stumped to where I was, and I would jump out roaring like a dinosaur, and he'd roar back and then punch me in the stomach and go, "Ah, you scared me, Dad." For my wife, he would snuggle deeply and tell her he loved her, and sometimes he would fearlessly climb onto the counter and go into the cabinets and pull out a box of cake mix and help her make a cake. And for his grandmother, he was glued to her side. They had their inside jokes. he learned to love all the odd old candies like black licorice or candy corn. And for his brother, he would sit with him and watch videos on his iPad so Big Brother knew he was near. He was just so smart and funny and knew things that most little kids didn't know. Like whenever we would go in the car, he would always try to give us directions to McDonald's because he always wanted French fries. Another thing he always wanted to do was help us with errands. If he saw me or my wife putting on our tennis shoes, he would run and put his shoes on and wanted to go and just to spend time with us. Now, these are things we will never get to do with him again. What I am most sad about now is not just the time I don't get to spend with him, but the time his brother, his sister, his mother, his grandma, and all of our family that doesn't get to spend with him with the time again, and we are all robbed of that opportunity. He was on a path to be a big kid, which is why I called him my big guy too. He was going to be the protector of his brother and sister. That part was evident since the moment I brought Julian and his brother to the hospital to meet the new baby sister and see their mother. Julian was so in love with her. He wouldn't leave her alone or take his eyes off her while we're there. And he even tried feeding her while she laid in the crib sleeping. His sister won't get to know the amount of love he had for her other than from what we tell her. She didn't even get a full 2 months with him before he was taken from us. When we had our daughter, I finally felt I had a full life. I had everything I ever wanted. A beautiful, loving wife, 2 sons and a daughter. It didn't even last all of 2 months before that monster took him from us. Now all of our hearts will forever be missing a piece, and it's up to all of us to keep his light shining, even though his star is gone. With that, I would like to thank you for taking the time to hear me out and speak about our son and what he was able to give this world in such a short time. And thank you again to the prosecution, Anna and Julian, for fighting so hard for our boy and my wife. And thanks to the jury for getting it right. And thank you to the North Homestead Police Department for all the work you guys did with helping on that day. And to the community for the continued support. We will be forever grateful. With all that being said too, Judge Russo, I ask you to do what's best for my family and the community so she has no opportunity to commit these heinous crimes again. I'm asking you to give her the maximum sentence possible, life without parole. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll hear from you, Margaret.
Did I say my name?
Well, sure. I'm sorry.
My name is Margot Wood, Margot. I watched my son take his first breaths when he was born, and I watched him take his last in my arms, covered in his blood. A mother should never have to bury their child. A mother is supposed to go first, not her children. A mother shouldn't receive her child's death certificate at 3 years old, and his cause of death is by homicide. That woman Murdering my son replays in my head every single day. It is my living nightmare. The last thing I will ever hear from my son is his scream, the sound of his pain and fear before he was gone. And I can still see the terror in his eyes, and it haunts me every day. He was my baby boy, and the day he died, a part of me died with him. My older son has autism. He doesn't fully understand why his little brother, his best friend, isn't here anymore. He asks us about heaven and if we can just wake up baby Julian so he can come home and be here with us. He thinks if he goes to the hospital, he can go and see him. When his dad goes to run an errand or leaves for work, my son worries that he won't come home. I have to call my husband on video chat so he can make sure his dad isn't dead. The days Jared and I were here for trial, he thought we both died. So my aunt and my mom had to reassure him that we were okay and we would be home later. When his friends or teachers at school are absent due to being sick or having appointments, when they come back, he runs to them and gives them a big hug and yells, "You're alive." You have not only hurt me, you have not only taken away my youngest son, you have caused trauma to my other children. My daughter was only 2 months old when she killed my sweet boy. Julian gave his sister all the love and affection a big brother could ever give in that short time. Coming home from preschool, he would take off his backpack and run to give her a big hug and a kiss. He helped with bath time, stood next to me during diaper changes, and would help with giving her a bottle. They were like two peas in a pod, Velcroed together. Wherever she was, he was right next to her. My daughter is 18 months. And now she only knows going to the cemetery to see her brother. She will never get another hug, a kiss, or a cuddle from her older brother. He is now just her guardian angel. She will never know how much he loved her and how happy he was to see her when she was born. Only the stories that we tell her. Julian brought laughter, light, and love in our home with his infectious laugh. He helped with my oldest son in so many ways with communication and play. Our home isn't as loud and chaotic anymore, not the way it used to be. There's no one playing with dinosaurs and chasing around his big brother with them. My boys aren't wrestling in the living room and dancing to the Minions movies. There is no one dressing up for Halloween as a dinosaur. My son would have been 5 in 2 days. She took that from us. She took birthdays, holidays, milestones, graduations, seeing what kind of man he would have turned into. No grandchildren, no nieces or nephews for his siblings. When you murdered him, you took those potential lives, moments, and memories from all of us. If I want my family to be whole, we have to go to the cemetery where all of my children could be together. My oldest doesn't like going because it makes him sad. Now when I take pictures of my son, it's just his name on a wall, surrounded by flowers and dinosaurs that people leave him. Instead of taking photos of him making funny photos, cute smiles, or laughing pictures. I hate you with every fiber of my being. Because of you, I live in constant fear. For months, I couldn't leave my home. If I did leave my home, I needed someone by my side, and even then I was stricken with fear. I don't take my children to the store by myself anymore because I fear something might happen. I leave my kids at home with my mom and go by myself because if anything happens, it'll just happen to me. I hate that I'm here and my son is gone. Just because you have a mental illness doesn't mean you can use that to justify you murdering my son. What you did was unforgivable, and it can never be taken back. You deserve to go to jail for the rest of your life, so you can't hurt anyone else. You don't deserve a second chance. You don't deserve mercy. You didn't give my son any. You belong in prison where there is no chance of you getting out. The jury got it right. When they read the verdict that you were guilty on all counts, it felt like the first time I could actually breathe in the last 499 days. Because I knew in my heart that you were going exactly where you need to be, in prison. You don't deserve the luxury of a mental facility where you can earn privileges and possibly be released back into the world. That's too good for you. The world is safer with you behind bars. Judge Russo, I urge you to give her the maximum penalty without parole, so she has no chance of hurting another innocent soul like my sweet baby boy, Julian. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Faralia?
Yes. Detective Sean Ventris from the North Olmsted Police Department is going to speak.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
Just gonna leave this tilted, if that's okay.
Sure.
My name is Detective Sean Ventris, and I'm with the North Olmsted Police Department. First name is spelled S-E-A-N. Last name is V as in Victor, E-N-T-R-I-C-E. I speak today on behalf of every officer and staff member who was involved in the investigation of the murder of 3-year-old Julian Wood. No amount of training can prepare a police officer for the loss of a child. This case has left a lasting emotional impact on everyone who responded that day. The officers who found Julian Wood will never forget what they saw, the innocence that was taken, and the silence that followed. For many, it is an image and weight they will carry for the rest of their lives. Our department has seasoned officers, people who have spent decades on the job, who struggle to sleep, break down in private, and question how something so cruel could happen. Some sought counseling, others withdrew, and all were changed. In policing, we learn to build emotional armor, but this case pierced through it completely. The impact extended far beyond the station walls. The community where we serve was shaken to its core. Parents became fearful, neighbors grieved together, and many questioned how such violence could touch the life of a young child. The officers who patrol these streets now do so with heavier hearts, knowing that the unthinkable is possible even here in North Olmsted. For months, our investigators worked tirelessly, reviewing the case and collecting evidence. Every step of the process was fueled not just by duty, but by a deep personal drive to bring justice for a little boy who could not speak for himself. This case has reminded us all of both the fragility of life and the weight of our responsibility as protectors of our community. It has strengthened our resolve, but also revealed the deep emotional cost of what we do. On behalf of the North Olmsted Police Department, I ask the court to recognize that this crime did not only destroy one young life, it profoundly affected an entire community and the officers sworn to serve it. The justice in this case is not only about punishment, it is about acknowledging the immense harm done and ensuring that such tragedy is never repeated. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fralia?
Thank you, Your Honor. The overriding purposes of felony sentencing are to protect the public from future crimes and punish the offender. The state, Your Honor, is going to ask you to impose the maximum penalty allowed by law in this case. Life without parole for Julian Wood and consecutive time for Margot Wood. Your Honor, you sat with us for 8 days and learned about Bionca Ellis. She had no regard for human life when she stabbed a vulnerable 3-year-old child sitting in a shopping cart. She stabbed him to death after hunting him down. She targeted him. And I'm sure, Your Honor, you remember how this defendant selected her weapon of choice. She left Volunteers of America with 2 knives in her hand. She goes to Things Outlet, and you observe her on the video searching and looking around with knives on her back, behind her back. She walks out, and she goes to a cement column to check out the pliability of the knife. She keeps the 8-inch butcher knife. She continues to walk into Giant Eagle, passing people on both sides of her. But once she sees Julian in a shopping cart and Margot pushing that shopping cart, she does an immediate about-face, and she follows them closely behind. Mrs. Wood stops. The defendant continues to walk past her. But she waits. She waits at the foyer of Giant Eagle, the entrance. As Margot and Julian pass her by, she gets right behind them. She resumes walking behind them through the parking lot until she gets to Margot and Julian. And then you know what happens next. When a murder occurs in our community, folks want answers. When a murder occurs, the victim is able to fight back, yet they succumb to their acts. They succumb to their attack and they die. What is unique and so heinous in this case is that a defenseless 3-year-old who had absolutely no ability to fight off his attacker was slaughtered by this defendant, and he succumbed to his injuries. The surveillance video of Giant Eagle demonstrates that this defendant carefully chose her victims and executed her plan. Her egregious actions demand the most punishment allowed under under the law. You know, Judge, words are bantered about in courtrooms daily. As lawyers, we choose our words carefully. We have word choices, we have pronunciations, we have inflections in our voices. And we have a jury system made up of common, ordinary people who walk into this courtroom not knowing what case they are going to sit on. But that jury system is the crux of our legal system. The jury in this case chose its word carefully, and they found Bionca Ellis guilty of all counts. They rejected the not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of the act, indicating that this defendant knew the difference between right and wrong. Now, Judge, we stand before you and ask you that in a civilized society, we, the people, rely on the recourse of the law. We take an oath to uphold the law. Now it's time to impose punishment for breaking the law. When I hear the word mercy, mercy is given by God. Courtrooms, judges dispense justice. Society, Judge, cannot afford another Bionca Ellis harming another Julian Wood or Margot Wood in this community. I know that you will take everything into consideration. And I know that you will do what society demands and what this family deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Ms. Ellis? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Judge, thank you, first of all.
The microphone was turned off. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay.
I could have heard you anyways, but I just want to make
I
sure.
thought so.
Yeah. Thank you.
As you know, these are unique trials when the defense is not guilty by reason of insanity. Not unlike a capital murder case, you get to hear the mitigation during the course of the trial. And what we learned is that Bionca's 34 years old. She has no prior felony convictions. We accepted responsibility in this case. We acknowledged it in voir dire, in opening statement, and then in closing argument. She allowed for us to have that as a part of her defense. And we know that she's remorseful. You heard the testimony of Dr. West. She told you that once Bionca learned what had occurred, she was tearful. She expressed it. And throughout the course of this trial, Bionca demonstrated good behavior,
She was polite. She never got out of pocket. And that is Bionca on medication. And that trial lasted for 8, 9, 10 days. If nothing more, we learned that she's two different people. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When she's medicated, this is what you get. When she's not medicated, what happened on June 3rd, it's a different version of Bionca. Now, typically at this stage, as defense lawyers, we capitulate, we talk about responsibility, we talk about remorse. And what I want to say is this. Mr. Johnson and I respectfully disagree with the verdict. And while we have tremendous respect for that family back there and the courage that they've shown, the civility that they've demonstrated throughout the course of this trial, and respect for the state and law enforcement who did a great job in this case. Although we accept the verdict, we respectfully disagree with it. And what I'll say is that you have to decide the worst form of the offense when you are sentencing. And we all know that all the experts in the case agree that Bionca was mentally ill. You know she suffered from a severe mental disease. There's no question about that. And that we all know that from at least January of 2024, all the way up until June of 2024, she was unstable, she was hospitalized, and she was not on medication. You had that evidence as recent as maybe 3 or 4 days prior to this incident while she was in the North Olmsted jail. So she's not okay from January to June of 2024. And then once she's arrested and she comes into the arraignment room for the next couple of months, we know that she's incompetent. Somehow, just on the day of the incident, she's not well. And I'm by no means, I'm not relitigating this. That's not my intention. You understand that. This is something that you're allowed to take into consideration for purposes of mitigation and deciding whether or not this case is the worst form of the offense. I am firmly convinced that had she been found not guilty by reason of insanity, based on my experience with these cases, that she'd probably be in hospital for the next 20, 30 years. You're allowed to weigh all of that. And she's been in custody for almost a year and a half. When on medication, she's been on custody without incident. I don't know if they want me to point them out, but she's had strong family support throughout the course of this trial. And looking at the sentencing factors under 292912, I think that there's a lot of mitigation in this case. And I know how powerful these facts are as it relates to the death of a child. And I know it's a very weighty decision for you. But judges don't make decisions based on emotions. You follow the law, you look at the sentencing factors, and then you make a decision based on her history and her characteristics. You make a decision based on what you know about her. So, both Mr. Johnson and I respectfully ask the court to consider 20 years before she's parole eligible to a life sentence and sentence her accordingly as it relates to Margot's injuries. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, anything? Anything on Ms. Ellis would like to speak?
I just want to say I apologize. I'm really sorry for what happened.
Okay. All right, you can be seated. Thank you. Justin, I'm just pushing it right up to me so it's out of the way. Thank you. Thanks for your help. So with respect to sentencing, so I have some comments that I'd like to make. I think it's fair for all of you to understand, just as the lawyers have pointed out, there are certain guidelines I follow as a judge. And some of those things that are said are mitigating. Others I take into consideration, just like any other of my fellow 33 judges here on the bench. Sometimes the word is desire and demand. Those are not in the revised code section 292911 or 292912. I don't say that to minimize any of the comments that were made, but I do take in everything, right? So I don't come up here on the bench without some idea of what the court may use as the tools under the revised code section to move forward with sentencing. And so I'll say to the Woods family, nothing I say here will ever capture the enormity of your loss. This court recognizes that your lives were forever changed on June 3rd of 2024. Understanding your comments, I thank you for them. No sentence I impose today will make you or your family whole again, and you know that. I do want you to know that I acknowledge, even similarly as Mr. Mack said, your courage, your hopes, and today my hope is that this brings some measure of closure for you to continue to move on in your lives. As you continue to navigate the landscape of life without your son, please know that I'm painfully aware of Julian's void in your lives. Justice cannot undo tragedy, but it can affirm that what happened was wrong and that your child's life mattered. And to the Ellis family, you've been here the whole time as well. I do want to acknowledge that this process as well has been painful for all of you. As a family, you must forge ahead and try to understand the nature and gravity of this case. Again, while my sentence must reflect the severity of the crime, I do not ignore that your family too are experiencing loss. And I hope that you find strength in the days ahead. Ms. Ellis, as noted, the jury of your peers has spoken. They have found that although we all have agreed that you suffer from schizophrenia, that you did understand the nature and wrongfulness of your actions as handed down in all of the guilty verdicts by this jury. The power of the American jury system is that it reflects the values of all the community that they represent. And as I sit here as a judge for almost 21 years, as a court, I accept the finding of your peers, and I'll sentence accordingly. The tragic sequence of events of June 3rd of 2024 and that attack, the jury has found was calculated and wholly without justification or reason of any kind. I rewatched every video for preparation for sentencing that was presented during the trial. And I find that it's clear that in that evidence, you are fixated on the very first child that you crossed paths with that tragic day. That tragic day, you chose to end the life of Julian Wood. A life, as we heard today, that was filled with limitless promises. Your choice has inflicted immeasurable pain on the Wood family, on your own family, and as we heard, on the community in which we all live. Mental illness does not excuse what you did. Although it will be taken into consideration when you are sentenced, that you continue to receive ongoing treatment while incarcerated. Ms. Ellis, I hope that you use this time to confront the harsh reality of the actions that you've created here in the courtroom. No sentence that I hand down today can undo the pain that you caused, but justice requires that your actions have consequences. Before concluding with my sentence and outlining what I will hand down today, I do want to take a moment to address an issue that confronts this court and our communities near and far. This tragedy did not occur in isolation. As a society that cares for the members of the community, we cannot continue to ignore the glaring gap in our county's mental health support system. It is not lost on this court that this trial started during Mental Illness Awareness Week, a week that recognizes the importance of meaningful connections, advocacy, and local actions to ensure that adequate mental health services are available to each and every citizen here in Cuyahoga County. Significantly, the medical experts in this case testified on October 10th, a day that was globally recognized as World Mental Health Day, a day that's dedicated to raising awareness around mental disorders and combating their social stigma. It's in this spirit I hope we all continue to confront the gap between the need for mental health treatment and its effective and equitable distribution and provision to all of those in our community. And therefore, I urgently implore our city and county leaders to continue providing facilities and programs that respond quickly and compassionately to those in crisis. The need is dire now than far too many of us realize. The leaders in this county have been discussing this topic for far too long. Please get it done. No family should have to lose a child, and no family should have to watch their loved ones deteriorate because meaningful and effective mental health services were unavailable. The absence of adequate and functioning mental health facilities in our community has tragic consequences. And I call upon our leaders at every level of government to make providing and supporting mental health care a true priority so that others in crisis can be helped before another tragedy occurs. But Ms. Ellis, again, I want to state that while your mental illness was accepted by this jury, it is not an excuse for what you did. The jury found that although you suffer from schizophrenia, you understood the nature and wrongfulness of your actions and handed down their guilty verdict on all charges. When reviewing the sentencing factors as outlined under 292911 and 292912, my job as a judge here is to punish the offender, but also to make sure that the sentence should be proportionate and not demeaning to the seriousness of the offender's conduct and the impact on the victims, and consistent with other sentences with similar crimes. In looking at the seriousness, of course, the child's age and the suffering weigh heavily for this court as well. And so with respect to my sentencing, after taking in consideration all the matters before the court that are appropriate under the principles and purposes of sentencing, the court's going to impose the following sentence. Starting with count 2, as found guilty on count 2 of murder, it's a life with parole eligibility at 15 years. On count 3, the murder charge under the B section, it's life with parole eligibility at 15 years. And those are the maximum sentences that can be handed down on those 2 counts. On count 4, with respect to the Reagan-Toke sentencing guidelines, count 4 and count 8 are both felonies of the second-degree felonious assault. We also speak to count 5, which was the endangering children as a felony of the second degree. And then we speak to count 7 and 6. The state and I have agreed that I will move forward with count 7. Under count 7, under the Reagan-Toke sentencing guidelines on the attempted murder in count 7, the court's going to hand down the maximum sentence of 11 years as the minimum sentence to the indefinite sentence of 16 and a half years. Again, I've outlined the Reagan-Toke guidelines and the reporting requirements for post-release control that will be controlling on all other felonies of the second and first degree, this being the highest level. I've outlined the 5 provisions, as I noted for the record already. And then with respect to the count 4 and 8, the maximum sentence is 8 years. I'll hand down that sentence. Count 5, 8 years. count 6, 11 years, count 8, 8 years, and then as indicted, count 10, which would be a 6-month sentence on the misdemeanor charge. Regarding aggravated murder and finding the defendant guilty of aggravated murder by this jury, the court's going to hand down a sentence of life without parole. I'll run every other sentence concurrent to life without parole. Ms. Ellis, you'll be given credit to 509 days of the time that you've served. I'll order you in the custody of the sheriff to transport you to Marysville Correctional Facility. I'll also indicate that fines, fees, and court costs will be waived with respect to this sentence. In addition to the verdict that has been handed down by this jury and the sentence that the court handed down, Ms. Ellis, you have a right to appeal both the sentence and the conviction in this case. You can do that by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk of courts within 30 days of this sentence. If you're unable to pay for the cost of an appeal, you have the right to appeal without payment of costs. If you're unable to obtain counsel for an appeal, I'll appoint counsel to represent you. If you're unable to pay the cost of documents necessary, they are provided to you without cost. You have a right to a notice of appeal filed timely on your behalf. And Ms. Ellis or counsel, do you wish to appeal both the sentence and the conviction handed down in this case?
Yes, Your Honor. No objection for the record and appoint counsel for the appeal.
I'll note your objection regarding my sentence, and knowing that she's unable to afford counsel, I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent her with respect to her appeal. Again, noting for the record, all counts will be run concurrent to each other, with the life without parole being count 1 sentence. I'll waive all fines, fees, and court costs, give her credit for the 509 days that she served, in addition to time while she awaits her transportation to Marysville Correctional Facility for Women. Is there anything further from the state of Ohio before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of Ms. Ellis?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we adjourn. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Aside from all the other sentences that went down, all of that is being combined into one. That's the life sentence without parole for Bionca Ellis. Here's the breakdown from Court TV. Earlier this month, Bionca Ellis was convicted of 10 felony charges, including murder and attempted murder in the June 2024 death of Julian Wood, after a jury rejected her insanity defense. The attack occurred when Ellis stole knives from a Volunteers of America store and followed Margot Wood and her son, 3-year-old Julian, as they left a Giant Eagle grocery store. Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Judge John Russo handed down the maximum sentence during an emotional hearing where the victim's family delivered powerful impact statements. You have not only hurt me, you have taken my youngest son. You have caused trauma to my other children, Margot Wood said during her victim impact statement. She described watching her son take his last breaths in her arms, covered in his blood, after Ellis stabbed the toddler in the face and back with a butcher knife. Julian died from his injuries, while Margot survived stab wounds to the shoulder. I hate you with every fiber of my being, Margot told Ellis during the sentencing hearing. Julian's father, Jared Wood, spoke about his son's boundless energy and love for dinosaurs, describing him as funny, outgoing, fearless, full of life, love, and laughter. He called Ellis a monster who robbed their family of countless future memories. The prosecution, led by assistant prosecuting attorneys Anna Faragula, and Jillian Pito, asked for the maximum sentence, arguing that Ellis carefully selected her weapon and deliberately targeted the victims. Surveillance video showed Ellis testing knives against concrete pillars before choosing an 8-inch butcher knife and following the Wood family through the parking lot. Defense attorneys Fernando Mack and Carlos Johnson acknowledged Ellis's responsibility, but argued for a lesser sentence, citing her mental illness. They requested 20 years before parole eligibility, noting that Ellis suffers from schizophrenia and was off her medication during the time of the attack. Ellis briefly addressed the court before saying only, "I just want to say I apologize for what I did." Judge Russo acknowledged the devastating impact on both families while emphasizing that mental illness does not excuse the crime. He sentenced Ellis to life without parole for aggravated murder and additional sentences on the remaining counts, all running concurrently. Ellis had been deemed incompetent to stand trial in September of 2024, but was restored to competency after 5 months of treatment. She had a documented history of mental health issues, including 13 hospitalizations and a pattern of non-compliance with medication. The defense indicated they plan to appeal the conviction and sentence. Well, I say they can go ahead and appeal all they want to. The fact of the matter is, she's on surveillance video. They caught her walking into the Giant Eagle grocery store with knife in her hand. They see her and Margot and Julian Wood passing by each other, only for Bionca Ellis to, I believe the prosecutors said, use a little military language here. She said she executed an about face and turned and followed them. Waited at the foyer, wherever they were at the store, followed them all the way out to the parking lot, and stabbed both mother and son, killing the boy. I know I've said this numerous times, but I do not wish upon anyone what just happened with Margot Wood or Julian. Today was his day for justice, and I believe he got exactly what was expected. As for Bionca Ellis, I do hope she gets the help that she needs. I really do. But at the same time, I side with the judge. You can have whatever mental health illness you want to. That doesn't give you the right to, on the low end, steal anything, and on the high end, murder someone. So, having said all that, Bionca Ellis is going to be sitting behind bars for the rest of her life. May God have mercy on her. I'll do a full-on wrap-up of this and any other news that comes in during the midweek bite, and I'll be sure to have something for the end of the week in the final word. Until then, Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. This has been a special report from Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you Wednesday. Until then, this is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded.
Thank you all for joining me here at the Drama-Free True Crime Destination. Be sure to follow Bethea'S Byte Reloaded all over social media and get your coverage of true crime news with no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded.